I got beta blockers.
I'm picturing Leonardo DiCaprio from Wolf of Wall Street when he's on the lewds.
Well, this is going to help you get that coffee world record too, Kyle.
It will. I can just like balance the beta blockers, split the coffee. They kind of work each other out.
AI ROI. That's a lot of letters. Dead.
AI ROI. Yeah, say that 5 times fast.
Yeah, AI ROI. AI ROI. So for all you finance people asking your CRO and CTOs for ROI on their AI investment, you are hypocrites. Every one of you, except for 9%. Are hypocrites.
AI for SaaS companies is becoming the landline phone of their packages. Most AI companies will tell you that they save you time, but saving time doesn't pay the bills.
Have you ever heard of Sergey Bobka?
I absolutely have not. Great name though.
I'm an early adopter over here. I listen to what you say. I know you
I
often
don't believe
think...
it, CJ. Listening to what I have to say and early adopter, this doesn't sound like you.
From Mostly Media, it's Mostly Growth. Go-to-market strategist Kyle Poyer and CFO CJ Gustafson share smart takes on growing revenue and running a company, pricing, unit economics, AI, leadership, candid insights for CEOs, CFOs, and CROs, or anyone else aspiring to climb to the C-suite. This is Mostly Growth.
Hey CJ, I've got a question for you. If you had to choose a walkout song, what would you walk out to?
That's what I think about every night. I have a whole playlist.
You do? What would it be?
Yeah, that's what makes it hard to choose just one. I think I would do Standing Ovation by Young Jeezy.
Standing ovation.
Nice. I mean, it's calling for a standing ovation. A little bit full of yourself, but you know.
Yeah.
Take it until you make it, right?
What about you? What would you do?
So I just had to do this. I spoke at a conference out in Amsterdam, and the organizers had a DJ on the stage, which is like too cool for me. Frankly, they asked me like what song I'd want to walk up to the stage to. And there's nothing that's like more embarrassing than that, by the way, those like 10 seconds of walking up the stage and having people watch you. And it's like you had to choose the music. So everyone's also like, he chose that? I went with Hello by Dragonette and Martin Solveig. You know that song?
I just came to say hello.
I was thinking of like Adele from the beginning of that song. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
How are you?
I was like, dude, that is really a depressing song to walk out to.
No, this is like an electro pop song that like sounds like it's European. I mean, it probably came across as me pandering to Europeans, but it's got a really long intro before they get to the chorus, which is just like, I just came to say hello. So I was going through my entire playlist of songs that I've listened to and listening to the lyrics because I was like, oh shit, I can't have this like say a message that like I then don't want to seem like I endorse or something. I way overthought it, but just the instrumental version of that was the best compromise I could come to.
They're like, why did he pick a song specifically about tariffs?
Ain't nobody can keep me still till they regulate that tariff bill.
Yeah, not a great time to be an American in Europe, that's for sure. But
did they keep playing it like for an uncomfortable amount of time once you got up to the stage, or did they cut over pretty quickly?
Thankfully, they did cut over pretty quickly. But this reminded me, I mean, we're in the height of tech conference season. And have you been in any tech conferences lately?
I'm going to 2 next week, actually. I'm flying out to LA.
And are you a speaker at these? What's your role at these? Are you hype man?
I'm hosting a dinner and I'm speaking at one. And then a week after, I'm going out to SF for the same thing.
Yeah, you're becoming a pro. I spoke at this conference. I think it went okay. I was the first keynote speaker, so I don't know if I brought all the energy, but I tried. And I was giving a new talk that I hadn't really done before and only had 20 minutes for the talk. And my problem is like with these talks, they always try to cram like way too much in, like way too many slides, way too much data. And then you've got like 30 seconds per slide. And so for help on this one, I interviewed this guy, Vince Pieri. He was a pastor in Kentucky. Yeah, you know Vince?
Yeah, he was on Leah Therian's show, her podcast.
Yeah, he was a pastor for a while where he has like literally got to speak for like his job. And now he helps tech execs become better public speakers. And he told me that there's a repeatable framework to all of the best talks. And so my goal was like absorb as much as I could from Vince to make this actually work.
What'd you learn?
The framework is like surprisingly simple, right? So like most people, they start off and it's like they talk all about themselves, how great they are. They then, have a bunch of different points they're trying to make, and then they wrap up in kind of a low note. What Vince told me is like you've got an opening, then you've got a trust building part, you have 3 main points, and then you've got a closing with a call to action. Like simple as that. And the structure is something that like works time and again for these talks. And like, just don't overcomplicate it, like follow the structure. And one of the big takeaways for me was like that intro, you don't make it about yourself. You don't talk about how great you are. You make it about the pain point that your talk will solve. And then you try to like add some complexity to it and get to like the deeper problem beneath the pain point. And so that model just like draws in curiosity, gets people interested in what you have to say. The other thing that stood out is like 3 main points. So not 5 points, not 8 points, not 10 points, but 3. And for each point, you need a one-liner about it. You need to bring in an analogy and you need an example. Those connect with people, different ways, and makes your talk actually memorable so that after the talk, people remember what you had to say.
I remember him talking about how poor people are preparing for their presentations too. And so they get really nervous because they know deep down that they haven't done enough for it, but they just say, I'll wing it once I'm up there. From someone who's done that before, that is not a great approach. Like, oh wait, no wonder it didn't go well. The first time you're hearing your presentation is when it's coming out of your mouth when you're actually on stage.
Oh, for sure. And that's, so I probably skew on the opposite side of that. I like practice too much. And then the goal is to not sound rehearsed. But like for me, I don't know about you, but like I used to be a really nervous public speaker. I remember the first big keynote I had was at SaaStr in San Francisco. And like I was like shaking like a leaf. I was afraid that I was going to lose my voice because my throat was getting so dry. Does that ever happen to you?
Yeah, it still does happen to me. And I don't know if I'm ever going to get over it. And that's why I intentionally put some sort of joke at the beginning, because I feel this like release in my body if I get people to laugh at first, and then I can go on with the rest of the presentation. So people, if you hear me make a joke at the start of a presentation to lighten up the mood, it's I'm doing it for me, not for you.
Like, please laugh to make CJ comfortable. So honestly, the first time that I ever got over it was like with medical help. I don't know if we don't talk about this that much in like tech, but I got beta blockers and they like slow your heart rate down. So you like cannot be nervous on beta blockers. Now, I can be like a lower energy person. So beta blockers like adds to that, right? It like you cannot be as animated with them, but that worked so well. And then just like that physical reaction of not feeling nervous, just like everything slowed down. And I was like, I can actually say the things that I want to say and like deliver the key points. And that got me so out of my head where like after doing it for the first few keynotes I had, I stopped needing to because it just like the anxiety about it went away.
I'm picturing Leonardo DiCaprio from Wolf of Wall Street when he's on the lewds and he's trying to crawl out of the Lamborghini in front of the country club. Like,
Skipped the tingle phase and went straight to the drool phase.
Well, this is going to help you get that coffee world record too, Kyle.
It will. I can just like balance the beta blockers, split the coffee. They kind of work each other out. But
this is not medical advice.
Obviously, yeah, not medical advice. Talk to your doctor, but they did work for me and surprisingly effective. I think the other thing for me was like, as you give some of those talks, you start seeing people like take photos of what you have to say or like the slides that you've made. And then you have people kind of come up to you after to ask about points. What I just realized is that people are going there not to judge what you have to say or like criticize you. Like they're going to learn and try to get something out of it. And so the more you're in your head, the less you actually like help the audience. It just helped me like reframe like it's not about like how animated I am, like how many laughs there are, like if this is a killer talk. It's like about, did someone take something meaningful from this that they can then do in their own company?
Sometimes I'll have that reaction too. Like out of the corner of my eye, I'll see somebody who's talking to somebody or on their phone or something. This guy's on his fucking phone. Like he doesn't really care what I'm saying. I'm like, all right, now I can just go to my thing. Like I wish everyone was on the edge of their seat paying attention, but you realize that they're people. They get distracted. They listen to some of it. And the more positive way to look at it, like you said, is they're there to learn something, not to criticize you.
And there was one thing I like about this conference. It was sassiest for folks that were there or curious. There were like real people there. I think one thing I've noticed with tech conferences is they go through these cycles where like it starts off kind of under the radar. Like there are some interesting people, but it's like relatively small audience, curated, tight knit. Then it starts to get bigger and bigger. As it gets bigger, it's just flooded with vendors, becomes pay to play. Like everyone that's speaking probably paid to get their speaking slot. And you just know that your data is being sold to like 30 companies to follow up with you afterwards. And what I like about this is like there were actual, like it was the right like middle ground where there were people there. They were real companies, but there were also enough people that there were some vendors. You know, as former CFO, like how did you justify what like conferences your team went to, and like that, was there ROI on that from a vendor perspective?
A lot of it is just belief that you have to be there for the brand name, and some of it was more
You as a CFO, you greenlit things for a belief in the brand name?
Yeah, because it was the most human touch point we would have all year as basically an inside sales force that would call people on the phone. And not the dark side of it, but a lot of these conferences, you have to pay to play. You have to just be there and you can't actually prove it. And I hate that excuse because there was one year where we just said, you know what, we're not going to pay. I'm making it up. $200K to go to this conference. Last year, it was pretty good, but we didn't have a measurable impact on it. And it didn't really show up in the numbers, like the registrations or anything, but people did talk about us not being there. They're like, oh, are they not well funded anymore? So there is a reputational aspect to it as well. I also think that there are things that come out of conferences that are larger than just the smaller deals in the normal business. And that's the biz dev side of things, because it's getting everybody in one place to have like a compelling event to go to then talk about other stuff. So I often look at conferences as what goes around the conference, not necessarily just the booth itself.
Yeah, I think that is fair. It's tough to feel strong-armed, right? To like feel like you need to be there. But if you are already knowing that you're going to go, then you kind of go like focus on making the most out of it. And I think when you change to that mentality, like you get the ROI because you put in the work to get the ROI. And so things like dinners around a conference, like I find if you're a tech company and your buyers are at that conference, if you can have your own touch point around it, like that dinner will be really high ROI, even if the conference might not be as high ROI.
That's exactly where I would get angry as a CFO if we were going to go out of our way to send 30 people to a conference and then you didn't take any customers out to dinner. You didn't work on any other deals or meet with, like for me, I'd go and meet with investors that were there or bankers that were there. You got to make the most of the whole thing. I would get frustrated where it felt like we were sending half the building there and then we weren't doing the supporting activities around it, because you got to remember, for salespeople, you're taking them out of the field. Nobody's hitting their quota number that week. And then there's always that talk with the CRO when you get back, like, oh, well, you know, we have people at conferences. Oh, like every single year there's that excuse. So you got to make the most of it.
The other thing that would drive me crazy is that like you would get all these people that would drop their cards in like to get a giveaway or something. So like you have this like influx of hundreds of leads or MQLs, right? Some legit, some not legit. But there'd be like no follow-up with them. Like it might take a rep like 2 weeks before they finally followed up with the lead. And at that point, they like had totally forgotten the conversation, anything relevant about the company. The buyer like forgot who you were. So I did actually come across a company called Mobley that's a next-gen conference badge scanner that like enriches your conference leads too, and then automatically follows up with them so you can turn conferences into like actual pipeline. I thought that was pretty cool because that is such a pet peeve of mine around events.
So next up, we've got a new A16Z report on AI companies. Take it away.
Yeah, so A16Z just finally released a report that was so fascinating for me because we talk all about AI. There's all these hot AI companies that are raising it like epic valuations. And A16Z partnered with Mercury and their database of 200,000 plus customers to look at what AI companies, startups are actually spending money on. And so they shared the top 50, and not surprisingly, the big winners were OpenAI and Anthropic. Probably no one's like shocked about that. But after that, it got pretty interesting. So Replit was number 3. They were the top vibe coder ahead of Cursor, which was number 6, and Lovable at 18. One that was high up on there was FreePick, which is an all-in-one creative suite, kind of like an AI native Canva vibes. So they were number 4 on this list. I had never heard of them before the report. They beat out Canva, which was 17, PhotoRoom at 22, Midjourney at 28, and a bunch of others. Are you going to start using FreePick?
Ben, why isn't Mr. Horse on here?
I was going to say FreePick, actually, I've used FreePick a lot in the past. It's really, really great for I know so many people use it for their like infographics or for just like images, used in various types of media. So 11 Labs also is like a kind of somewhat Mr. Horsey, I guess I should say.
See, I had literally never heard of them, before this report, but I guess a new product I got to check out. And then CJ, on another podcast, we talked about Fixyer, the email productivity app. Turns out they're number 7 on the list.
Wow. So many of these are kind of B2C or related to creating stuff in some way for production value. Not all of these are like B2B enterprise sales type things.
Yeah, I think in this report, given that it was partnered with Mercury, Mercury is where a lot of startups and like solopreneurs bank. Like I bank with Mercury. So I do think this probably skewed towards like that small business that kind of still operates like a consumer. But then part of it is like, honestly, a lot of the fastest growing AI products, they have this dual motion where they can capture the attention of the consumer. Like we talked about with Fixyer, like they do mass marketing towards consumers on Instagram, on TikTok, flooding the zone. And there's so much like consumer interest in AI that folks start to discover and adopt these products. But like they discover them as a consumer and then they put them on their business credit card to buy them. It's like, as we talked about before, it's product-led growth, but now like turbocharged with AI.
It's crazy just reflecting on how many of these I actually pay for. Fixer, Notion, Canva, Opus Clips.
You gotta get a CFO to look at your AI spend.
Yeah, we have to optimize our AI spend over here. We should get somebody who knows CFO things to do that because this is absurd.
One I noticed, did you see numbers 26 on this list?
Chloe, is that the lying thing?
Yeah, they're the cheat on everything app, or that's how it was like launched. It was went viral when they launched. They're famous for like only hiring people that have at least 100,000 followers on social media. What I think is just so hilarious about them is that they claim to be cheating on everything, and they launched like the most basic product imaginable. It's an AI note-taking app. It's like literally Gong, but like 10 years later. Like the coolest marketing for the most like vanilla product you could think of.
Okay, so Kyle, you look at this list. There's 50 on here. In 5 years, how many of these are just going to be bundled as a feature within a larger product?
That's a good question. I mean, I think the biggest thing that we're discovering is how much value is there in being AI native? Are these AI native companies able to build something that's like meaningfully different than just a wrapper around the LLM and like SaaS? I have to say though, like looking at some of these AI products, like looking at Fixer and a number of other ones on this list, like they're really, a lot of these are built as AI first. And I think they would be really hard for a traditional SaaS company to replicate. And so they'll still have to beat out a bunch of competitors and like there's a bunch to be proven out. But I think like there's some real staying power in a lot of these companies.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed, so your previous company was auto repair software and marketplace. There's not a lot of like vertical SaaS on here, not a lot of auto repair shop software on here. Some of that might be Mercury's customers, but I think horizontal apps clearly are like taken off from a spending perspective. Although there were some vertical players, like ones that stood out to me were Crosby, which is an agentic AI law firm, and then Alma was an AI-powered immigration law services. So some are breaking through,
Okay.
but for the most part, people are spending money on horizontal.
This is deeply horizontal. Poor Jasper AI. Are they still around?
RIP. I think they actually are still around, so I shouldn't say RIP, but they're one of those companies that like exploded out of the gate as an early AI copywriting assistant. And then I think OpenAI kind of ate their lunch a bit, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they've kind of had some life like breathed back into them. They've repositioned as more of an enterprise player and focused on marketing instead of just like broad horizontal application. I think they're back to growth and doing well, but would be curious to kind of do a where are they now with Jasper.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for bringing this chart. Shout out to Mercury for pulling this together.
Oh, CJ, this is what people are spending money on, but you've talked to CFOs. I think you've even surveyed a bunch of them about how they think about AI and how they spend money at the enterprise level. What do you learn?
So I surveyed my readers throughout the summer on 3 different questions. I partnered with Rex to do it. And so heading into the quarter in July, we asked people what's going to keep you busy in Q3. And number 1 was hiring the right people, 36%. Number 2 was assessing ROI on AI investments, 23%. Then you have optimizing your tech stack, improving CAC payback, increasing gross margins. So you can't lie on like at the beginning, right? Because you don't actually know what the results are going to be. But number 2 there, just put that in your head, assessing ROI on AI investments. So we asked another question in August, are you planning to swap out any tools? That one was more around procurement. And then if you skip to the end, poll number 3, where did you make the most progress in Q3? So we swung back around. Number 1, again, hiring the right people, 36%. Number 2, optimizing our tech stack. Number 3, improving CAC payback. The last one is assessing ROI on AI investments. It was single digit. So AI ROI, that's a lot of letters, dead
AI ROI. Yeah,
last.
say that 5 times fast.
Yeah, AI ROI. So for all you finance people asking your CRO and CTOs for ROI on their AI investment, you are hypocrites. Every one of you, except for 9%, are hypocrites. So what's your reflection on that, Kyle? First of all.
Yeah, so maybe that MIT study that went viral but had like no data behind it that said 95% of like enterprise AI pilots fail. Like maybe there was some truth to that after all. I mean, look, I think we're in the like show me the money era of AI spend. Like people have been experimenting. They've tried DIY stuff that they build themselves. They've tried vendors that have had all these promises. And now like I think some of the hype is starting to come down, and people are saying, hey, maybe this whole AGI future is like not right around the corner. I think we're moving from like AI hype to needing to see AI ROI. And ultimately, it's like going to be a good thing for the industry because there's not going to be AI unless like there's real business value and there's real like profitable companies built around the technology.
And I still did see in the data that companies were procuring things with AI in it. That was the second question, but they have no idea how to measure it. And eventually it's going to have to show up in the numbers in some way, shape, or form. What I did find encouraging was everybody said the number 1 priority was hiring top talent. And then they came back and said, that is actually what we put the most time into and made the most progress on. So we all think that AI is going to control alt delete us from the payroll, even though we're the ones running it. I thought it was a bit uplifting that we focused even more so on tools. We focus on hiring the right people, even in a weird macro environment.
What are my thoughts on this data? When I just think about AI companies, most AI companies will tell you that they save you time, but saving time doesn't pay the bills. And, Gen AI products will shave hours off your day, 10x your productivity. But like, that's what software does. Like all software helps you save time by automating work that would normally be done manually with like pencil and paper or spreadsheets. I just find like a business case or an ROI story built on saving time, like just doesn't get past the CFO, and you got to do more.
About $400 million was raised just this summer between 6 companies. So in the ERP space, you had Campfire and Rillet. Rillet raised $100
OpenAI
million.
raised that in a day. But
Yeah.
I'll let you keep that hot CFO summer story going.
Abacum put 60 on the board, Aleph 29 on the board, Tabs 55 on the board, RightRev 13 million. These companies are disrupting the CFO tech stack, which a lot of people thought, oh, they'll be the last people to benefit from the changes in AI. It's all going to be customer support or go-to-market related. And this just showed like that is a whack of cash. And also, did you like my meme?
I didn't even know you saw Mean Girls.
Oh man, I got that on rotation. Come on.
But so CJ, you were CFO of a company, right? Like if your team came to you and they said, hey, there's this great AI product, we got to buy it, right? Our CEO is saying, we all got to adopt AI. What's your reaction to that, especially in this like current environment where you now probably are spending a lot on AI and like feel like you probably are overspending relative to like what you're seeing as a result?
Well, so I was talking to Ali Hussein, the CEO and co-founder of Tabs this week, and he said something pretty compelling to me that you still have to raise money to do the other stuff, right? So for him, he's trying to own the revenue category. So he's like, even if I want to displace ARM by NetSuite, I still have to do all the other stuff and build the building blocks that NetSuite did, while also incorporating AI from the ground up to make sure that we have better data integrity and analysis. And so my mind as a CFO goes to, are you positive? I know it can do all these other cool things that we couldn't do before faster. Are you sure it can still do all the base case stuff that we were doing in some way, shape, or form? Because we can't just do the cool, sexy stuff. We got to make sure it all comes together as one.
Yeah. So kind of thinking of it as like what's core to the business and maybe is displacing existing spend where you have ROI by like spend displacement or vendor displacement. And then you've got incremental and you might have ROI on that incremental spend from like productivity or labor reduction or more revenue or whatever.
I do think that we're in the age of people having to come up with convoluted business cases to get a lot of this by, because like the survey showed, nobody knows how to measure the ROI on it. And in every good pitch to a CFO, you say, this is what we think we'll get on our investments. And the best companies come back 6 months later and said, did that actually come true? And apparently we're just not measuring it yet.
Well, one company I came across recently has an interesting approach to this. So a company called Crescendo, they're in the AI customer support space. And just about every AI customer support company, like there's a bunch of them that have all raised a bunch of money, probably even more money than the finance tech companies. Crescendo's pitch is that the AI vendors are going to tell you that there's ROI there, right? They're going to maybe even say there's outcome-based pricing, with like only charging you when AI resolves a customer support question. But for businesses, it ends up not delivering ROI because they're now having an existing customer support team that they need to maintain. Plus now this AI bill, the AI is not going to handle like the most complicated requests and it's not going to deliver that like high touch level of service to customers. But now you've got to hire people to like train the AI to write QA docs, training the models and everything. And so you've got incremental headcount and incremental spend. And so their model is saying, we're just going to be like the one-stop shop for your customer support. And it'll be a combination of a managed service and AI. And so they're framing it as managed AI. And they're going to charge about like half the cost or less of what you're currently spending on customer support. And so what I think is so interesting about that model is like they're taking on the total risk. They're owning the full service from beginning to end, which means they can guarantee ROI to customers rather than just being like another vendor in a tech stack that might seem to have ROI on its own, but doesn't end up delivering ROI when the customer looks at it like from a fully loaded basis.
They're reselling AI productivity and putting a lower floor for the risk of adoption.
Yeah, it's a different model. It's a more creative model than just AI. Like it's AI plus people. I think these models are going to start to become more and more popular. Like you're seeing OpenAI invest in like enterprise services. You're seeing like Palantir have a lot of success with forward deployed engineers. Like people are looking for a managed service that has AI under the hood, but like solves their problem, not just like something else to add to their tech flow.
But you're getting to it there. That's what you're paying for your problem to be solved, right? You're not necessarily paying for AI. AI is just a way to get to your problem being solved.
Totally. Yeah, you want your problem to be solved. You can size up how much that problem costs you today.
I'm cool
You
with
could
that.
figure out how much you'd spend in the future. And if it's less for the same results, like you've got ROI from AI.
CFO approved.
Next up, we're going to stick in the realm of AI. And Kyle, it sounds like there is a new AI pricing model that's kind of in vogue.
There is. It's not a sexy pricing model. It's not outcome-based pricing. It's not usage-based pricing. Any guesses, CJ, on what it is?
I mean, I'm out of options here. Is this just like going to the grocery store and paying for a mango? I don't know. What is this?
It's called bundling. One of the oldest tricks around, right? There's like basically bundling and unbundling are the only things you can do. I was struck by Justin, co-founder over at Tropic, released some data on what he's been seeing from their customer spending. And he called out that there's an increasing number of SaaS companies that had AI capabilities, and they launched those AI capabilities as like separate standalone products at their own kind of standalone prices. They probably were like disappointed by the adoption that those products had, and now they're under tremendous pressure to have AI revenue. And so they're kind of force feeding AI down their customers' throats, like whether customers want it or not. And so he gave the example of Slack, and he said that when Slack AI was a standalone SKU, fewer than 1 in 4 customers bought it, according to their data. So most customers didn't want AI from Slack, didn't feel like they needed it. But now Slack bundled AI into all of its plans and is charging as much as 125% more for these plans that are now AI powered. So their business plans are about 20% more expensive. Their enterprise grid is 40% more, and their enterprise select, based on his data, is 125% more expensive.
How do we know that they weren't just unsure what the cost structure would be? So they made it a standalone to make sure that they didn't lose money on it. And now they have a more reliable P&L associated with it that they know they can put it into something like a traditional seat-based model, and they're not going to go broke.
If they had that model, but they knew people valued it, in my mind, you would essentially have additional SKUs that were like we'd have a good, better, best plan. You'd include AI in best and have it as a reason why you'd upgrade from like better to best, right? So it could still be a seat-based pricing, but you'd like upgrade to spend more money. You believe a lot of people want it, so they're comfortable upgrading to spend more money. In this model, like, you know, your cost structure is fine because you actually think most customers aren't going to use it. And so it's kind of a reason to raise prices. It's like a justification for a price increase, but it feels like if the product isn't there, it could backfire.
It reminds me of when I went to Chick-fil-A this past weekend with my dog, Walter. We do that sometimes. And I wanted the chicken sandwich with fries, and I was going to order that. But then it came as a meal. And then I said, I don't want the drink. And he's like, well, it comes with that. It's already bundled in. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll get both. So I walked out with a drink, even though I didn't need one. Horrible example.
So we've got Comcast here in Boston. And there was a time when I bought their triple play, which is like TV, internet.
Oh, I know
and
where you're
phone.
going. Yeah.
I bought the triple play because it was less expensive than just buying TV and internet. And I literally never activated the landline phone. I never had a landline phone, but I had like a 2-year contract where I was paying for a landline phone just because it was cheaper to buy that plan.
We did the exact same thing. I totally knew you were going to say that when you started with the Comcast bundle, but they shipped us some sort of router or something to hook into the landline phone. But of course, we never hooked it up. So at the end of the period, we had no idea where it was. And then they hit me with like some obscene charge for whatever the equipment associated with the landline that I don't use cost them.
What I'm worried about here is that AI for SaaS companies is becoming the landline phone of their packages. People, like, as we saw in the data from Andreessen, like, there is real spend going to AI native companies. And I think people want like the best in class AI. They don't necessarily want like an LLM wrapper around an existing product.
Have you had any tools that you've used with a weird AI thing that's now available to you and you're not remotely interested in tapping into that? You just want it for whatever you're using it for before?
Google Workspace for me is that, I mean, Google has some great AI products, but Google did the same thing as Slack, and they bundled Gemini into Google Workspace plans and used that as a rationale for pretty big price increases. Like, I've never done anything with Gemini in Google Workspace, and their AI native capabilities around email, I just find so cringy. Like when they try to summarize an email for me, and gets it like totally wrong is negative value.
Yeah.
And so I've had that forced down my throat.
Next up, we have got the segment that is potentially reliable thing that I read at 2 a.m. Not I, though. Kyle or CJ, take it away.
Well, I know this actually is reliable because I went down a YouTube rabbit hole after talking to Chris Greiner. So he's the CFO of Zeta Global. They're an AI marketing cloud, so go-to-market tools. And he told this great story about beat and raise forecasting. And so I asked him, I said, you've got 15 straight quarters of beat and raise. That's something to be very proud of, to put up on the fridge. Like, it's hard to do that 15 straight quarters in a row. Is there a cost to this streak? Not financially, but emotionally or culturally, like within the company. Oh, wow, 15 in a row. Let's not mess this up. And he didn't pause. He said, not even close. We're not even halfway there yet. And so, Kyle, I'll ask the question that he asked me. He said, have you ever heard of Sergey Bubka?
I absolutely have not. Great name, though.
Okay, so he hadn't heard of Sergey Bubka either until he spoke with his old boss at IBM, Steve Mills. So if you imagine the IBM offices in the 1990s, it's the place to work, right? It's the coolest hardware/software company. Steve Mills was the mind behind the software component at IBM. He's the godfather of IBM software. And Chris worked for him, and he would go into his office, and it was this extremely nice office, okay? Corner office, nothing on the walls, right? Not ornate, except this one small photo in the background. And it's this Soviet pole vaulter, the Soviet era pole vaulter in the Olympics, sprinting with his massive vault, his stick, whatever you want to call it, his pole.
Pole.
He's
It's
sprinting.
in the name, CJ.
He's sprinting with his pole. Thank you. I needed help there. To get to his spot to jump over the bar and clear it. He's like, for like 5 years, I've gone into this guy's office. I've never asked him, what is this? And so he said, finally, I got the guts up to ask him. And finally I said, Steve, what is this picture of this pole vaulter? And he said, well, do you know who Sergey Bubka is? And he said, absolutely not. And so the story behind that is Sergey Bubka is arguably the best pole vaulter of all time. Now he's been supplanted by Mondo Duplantis, who's a Swedish pole vaulter. But basically what happened was he was paid by the Soviet Union a stipend every time that he beat a world record. And so he would beat this record incrementally, not by 6 inches, not by a foot and blow it out of the water. He would beat it by half an inch to an inch every single time. That way he could collect on the bonuses. He went on to beat his own world record 36 straight times. So I thought it was an amazing story because that truly is the essence of beat and raise. You don't want to beat it by so much that it makes the next quarter completely unattainable, and you want to show that you have command of whatever your skills are. So that's Sergey Bubka.
That's some pretty capitalist behavior for a communist country.
I never thought about it that way.
But hey, show me the incentives. I'll show you the result.
Yeah.
All right, well, my potentially reliable thing that I read, you know J. Edgar Hoover, like the famous old FBI director?
Didn't he kick all the communists out?
I'm sure he did. He's famous for a bunch of stuff. But I was reading the other day that he sent a note to his direct reports, and the note just had 3 words: watch the borders. You know what his reports did?
Watch the borders.
They scrambled to Canada and Mexico to try to figure out what was going on. Turns out the feedback was literally just to watch the borders of the document, to make sure that the documents people were sharing in their memos had the right border spacing in all of them. It's like the most, basic request out there that people totally misrepresented. And it just made me think, like, how often are bosses giving feedback that they think is just like obvious and just like so straightforward. And then it turns out like your team members are so eager to please that they just go like above and beyond, but in the complete opposite direction.
They literally went to the borders of the country based on this note.
They did. And he literally was meaning just like watch the borders of the page.
So Jeff Bezos is famous for just sending emails back to people with a question, or at least he was. I just interviewed the CFO of DocuSign for Run the Numbers, Blake Grayson, and he said that you would fear getting the dreaded question mark from Jeff email. And so it reminds me of that, just sending a question mark back based on whatever you said, and then you scrambling to do whatever you thought was a proper response to that.
Yeah, you have like no idea how to respond to just like that empty question mark. I'm just now thinking about some of like my poor employees and some of the things I probably had them go like chase down that just were like totally not what I meant. And now I'm worried I'm gonna do something similar to benevolent Ben over here.
When we adopted Kurt at Parts Tech, he was like a beaten dog. It took him 6 months to regain his voice, Kyle.
I don't believe that.
He was bossing me around by day 2.
Yeah, that's more like it.
Next up, we've got pricing in the real world. I think this may reference some stuff we were talking about before. So why don't y'all take it away?
Whereas I told you I was in Amsterdam earlier this week. Beautiful city, love the canals. And I learned something really cool about pricing. So you know how they've got those like tall, narrow houses along the canal that have been like preserved for hundreds of years to look really cool?
Yeah.
Do you have any idea why the houses are built that way in Amsterdam and nowhere else?
I just thought it was cool architecture. The pictures are beautiful.
Well, it is about taxes, believe it or not. So their taxes starting in the like 1500s for canal houses, it was based on how wide your house was. And so folks would just compete to create like narrower and narrower houses that would still be like 5 or 6 stories tall and super deep, just so that they could avoid a huge tax bill. I mean, then they had to like, you know, invent hoisting systems because the stairs had to be so narrow that you couldn't bring furniture inside like through the stairs. You had to bring it in through the windows. It just like, it's wild what people will do to save a buck on taxes.
Yeah, there's somebody out there who's a billionaire and their family was the first elevator magnate in Amsterdam.
I thought this was really cool with Amsterdam. And then what was the other fun fact, similar to do with taxes. So in the 1600s, they started expanding the canal ring because there was overpopulation of cities. And then people started going the opposite direction. Like it was a show of how rich you were that you could just build a really freaking wide canal house. And so
Really?
people just started building these like really wide ones because it was like a sign of luxury and a status symbol. So I think to me, like the big takeaway is that your customers will adapt like their behavior based on your pricing model. And it's pricing is like, as much as it seems like a rational, like economic decision, it ends up actually baking in so much of this like behavioral psychology and like cultural phenomenon that like it's way more than just anything rational.
I mean, there's a whole cottage industry now around cloud optimization. You show me the measurement, I'll show you how to get around it.
Totally. But yeah, seeing Amsterdam just reminded me, back in my college days, my friends and I shared like a big triple decker in Providence, Rhode Island, and we had to furnish it. We were all like, you know, broke college students. And so our couch came from Bob's Discount Furniture. Shout out. No relation to Bob's Barricades.
I was going to ask, all right, cool.
Yeah, no relation. The couch did fit into our apartment, but it did not come out of the apartment. We tried to take it out and it actually had expanded so much because it was just a shitty couch. It expanded so much it wouldn't fit back through the door to leave. The next generation of student renters got a free couch, whether they wanted it or not.
It's probably still there. Ben, I'll send you this video to put into the podcast. We bought our condo in Florida, and part of the terms of it were we had to keep the fold-out sofa bed in the attic, and it's up this spiral staircase. So after 4 years, we finally hired someone to get rid of it. And these 2 guys come, and you can see me and my wife are watching from the window. Like, when are they going to throw this thing? They threw this like 400-pound couch, like a toothpick, out the window straight into the back of a dumpster.
Oh shit, they did it.
This is the most impressive shot I've ever seen.
That's pretty impressive.
All right, next up, something I tried this week, harkening back to a previous episode. We've got an answer.
I'm an early adopter over here. I listen to what you say. I know you
I
often
don't believe
think,
it, CJ. Listening to what I have to say and early adopter, this doesn't sound like you.
I'm using Fixyer, man. I've been paying for it. I've been doing it for 2 weeks. And I gotta say, first of all, I've never had a note-taking app before. No one ever told me, like, my hand is not cramping up anymore. That's great. And then the emails, I actually agree with the categorizations. Now, I did send you a message at first that I've never felt so efficient, yet also so violated. because it went and did a draft of every single email ever in there. And it's a very odd feeling when you see draft on every single email that's in your inbox. But I got to hand it to you, man. This was a good pick. I'm not only using it, they sent me an email today that said I'm in the top 1% of their users.
Wow. First time you ever gotten that notification. So are you an inbox zero guy now?
I've always been an inbox zero person, no matter what. I actually have more unread than I've ever had because they're in the categories that I know I don't have to read, like someone accepting a meeting invite or something. So the way that they break it down with to respond to, actioned, and FYI, those are really helpful. And I have to say, I bet 99% of the time they get it right.
Not too shabby. The big thing is like, can you trust it, right? Because if it's like, there's that threshold of if it's say 95% right, you're just thinking about that other 5%, and there's like just that extra cognitive load of worrying about that. But if it's 99% right, you're like, hey, that's actually probably as well or better as I'd probably do on my own, because you might miss a few. It's like funny to think about where that threshold is for AI products.
Not to get super tactical, but what would make it perfect is if I could change, and maybe this exists, the links that I auto book the calendars. So it gives you the option to create a meeting based on your correspondence back and forth. I want to be able to send people a Riverside link to book a podcast recording or something. So I haven't fully adopted the meeting booking aspect of it yet, but the drafting and the filtering is most important to me. Some of the drafting has been a little off, but the filtering has been great.
So am I going to now have to worry about whether an email was sent by you or by AI?
So it's great because apparently you didn't know last week. It's working.
Mostly Growth is a Mostly Media production, executive produced by Ben Hillman. That's me. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of CJ, Kyle, and Ben. Just some guys who love talking growth, mostly. If you like this podcast, hit subscribe, give us 5 stars, or hit like. The algorithm overlords thank you. Drink water, call your mom, and have a great day.